When we look at politics today, it feels like the two-party system is just the way things are. But what if I told you that the very people who designed the American Republic saw that exact system as its single greatest threat? It's a conflict that goes right back to the very beginning, and believe it or not, it might just point us to a different way forward. Just listen to this. This is John Adams, writing way back in 1780. He called a two-party system the greatest political evil. That's pretty intense, right? And he wasn't alone. This wasn't just some random thought. It was a deep shared fear among the founders. And understanding why they were so afraid is the key to unlocking the whole alternative framework we're going to break down today. So let's start there. The founders were basically unanimous in their fear of what they called factions. For them, political parties weren't some useful tool for democracy. No, they saw them as a mortal disease, something that had literally destroyed every single popular government that came before them. So for them, this wasn't just a nuisance, it was a fundamental problem they had to solve. And if you're going to solve a problem, you first have to define it, really nail it down. This is James Madison's definition from Federalist No. 10, and you got to pay close attention here, because a faction isn't just any old group of people. The key part is that it's a group whose passion or interest is actively harmful to the rights of other people or to the good of the community as a whole. That's the danger they were trying to head off. Okay, so Madison basically put on his doctor's coat and diagnosed the problem. He said the source of factions, well, it's just human nature. It's baked into who we are. So he looked at two possible cures. The first option, remove the cause. But he realized that would mean destroying liberty itself, a cure he literally called worse than the disease. So that left only one option on the table. Design a system that could control the effects of these factions, since you could never get rid of them completely. And his analogy for this is just brilliant. He says liberty is to faction what air is to fire. Think about that. You can't have a fire without air, but you would never get rid of all the air just to prevent fires, right? Of course not. So the goal isn't to stamp out the fire completely, but to build a fireplace, a structure that can contain it and keep it from burning the whole house down. And this idea wasn't just Madison's. Years later, George Washington used the exact same metaphor in his farewell address. He called the spirit of party a fire that you can't put out. He said, look, maybe it can provide a little warmth, but if you're not constantly vigilant, it's going to burst into a flame and consume everything. And his warnings were incredibly specific. It's almost chilling to read them today. He predicted partisanship would weaken the government, stir up people with baseless fears, and even lead to riots. But his biggest fear? That it would swing the door wide open for foreign influence and let the will of one party completely replace the will of the people. So we've got the diagnosis, right? Partisanship kindles animosity, it opens the door to foreign influence. So, what's the antidote? This is where we make a really important pivot, from the problem to a potential solution. The idea here is that for every single destructive effect of party politics, there's a core principle that can act as a direct countermeasure. How does that work? Well, animosity loves darkness and lies, right? So you fight it with transparency. You counter a weak administration with accountability. This is the bedrock of the entire alternative we're talking about. And that brings us right to the heart of this primer, a principled alternative. We've heard the founders' warnings, we see the problem. Now let's look at a modern framework that's built on their insights, one that's designed not around loyalty to a party, but around a very specific set of attributes and principles. This whole framework is built on two pillars. On the left, you've got attributes. These are the internal things, the character of the people involved: honesty, empathy, adaptability, discipline. Then on the right, you've got the principles. This is the external code for how the group operates: transparency, accountability, integrity, and liberty. The core idea is simple, but it's also kind of radical. Your actions are measured against this code, not against a party platform. It's a huge shift from allegiance to a party to allegiance to a set of shared values. Okay, so a framework of principles is one thing. That's great, but how does it actually turn into action? I mean, how do people get involved? This system proposes a really clear, structured path for participation that goes way beyond just, checking a box for a party. The philosophy at the core of this is that responsibility has to be earned. It's not just handed to you. In this model, the level of participation you have is tied directly to how you've demonstrated your growth in 5 key areas. It's a merit-based approach, and it's designed to make sure that a person's influence is directly related to their contribution and their commitment. And these are the 5 pillars of that participation. It all starts with availability. You got to be willing to dedicate the time. Then comes experience, bringing real knowledge to the table. But, knowledge is useless without initiative, that drive to get things done without someone telling you what to do. And that action has to lead to output, actual progress. And finally, that progress has to have utility. It needs to be genuinely useful to the organization's goals. See how each one builds on the last? So then, these 5 characteristics map directly onto a clear path for getting more involved. Pretty much everyone starts out as a promoter, just sharing information. But as you show more initiative and output, you can become a volunteer, then an advocate who actually organizes programs, then a surrogate who oversees whole committees, and maybe eventually an executive with formal legal responsibility. The key is that every single step up that ladder is earned through proven merit. It creates a structure that's both transparent and accountable. So let's just tie this all together for a second. What we've really been looking at is a complete system. It starts with a philosophy that's rooted in those warnings from the founders, a system built on core principles. That philosophy is then put into practice by individuals who are guided by personal attributes. And it's all organized through a clear, merit-based structure for participation. And that brings us right back to where we started. The founders saw partisanship as this destructive fire, and they designed a whole constitution to try and contain it. Today, it feels like that fire is burning hotter than ever before. So the question this framework really leaves us with is a big one. Can a new structure, one built not on party but on principle, finally give us the tools we need to control that flame?